Welcome back. Now let's get the show on the road. And we're going to start by looking at developments in the aviation sector. The aviation sector has been in the news, I might say, all year, for good and for bad. Remember when we were told that there was now a new policy on aviation, and practitioners actually came on air and showed us the big book, and they had smiles on their faces from ear to ear. Things were going to change, and we were all very excited about that until sometime last month the unfortunate happened yet again, and that put them in the eye of the storm yet again. So today we have agencies who are involved in aviation, and we're going to be raising all kinds of issues with them this morning. We have in the studio Engineer Nnamdi Udo, who is Director General, Nigerian Airspace Management Agency. Good morning. And thank you very much for coming. We also have Dr. Anthony Anuforum, who is Director General of NIMET, those in charge of the weather, because the weather is very important in aviation. Good morning, sir. Good morning. Thank you. And last but not least, we have the Managing Director of FAN, Mr. George Oriesi. Good morning. Good morning. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
May I start with you, if I may, Mr. Oriesi? Yeah. What exactly is the role of FAN? What does FAN do? Let's start from there.
That's interesting because I know that there's a lot of misconception about FAN's role. Maybe because it's the most visible, everybody sees the airports. Mm-hmm. But FAN's role is to manage and develop airports for all stakeholders. And it's a statutory responsibility on the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria. And we are required to provide the infrastructure as well as supervise the services provided by more than 300 different people that do business on the airport. And to provide it safely and securely, in a nutshell.
So in terms of the management of the airports then, if you want to look at it, this is the window into our airline and aviation sector. This is what people see. What is actually happening with that sector, that arm of the aviation ministry and aviation sector? What is happening there? Because what people see at the moment is getting into the airport and not having somewhere to sit, getting into the airport and being sweaty and unhappy. What is happening there?
What's happening is a revival. And it's always important to tell the story the way the story is. Nigeria developed in the late 70s and early 80s, I think, what was an unmatched network of airports in Africa. But then airports are living organisms. They are never finished. You continue to construct them, you continue to develop them, you never ever stop.
And improve.
Unfortunately, in Nigeria, after we opened all these nice airports, the last one was in 1982, Jeez. We went to sleep for 30-something years. And in any country where you go to sleep with something as critical to the country's economic development as airports, what we have now, what we inherited 2 years ago, is what you find. A derelict and decrepit system that has allowed your flagship airport, Murtala Mohammed Airport, has dug it into a grave and made it a national embarrassment and shame to everybody in this country. And what we've started to do 2 years ago is to pick up. Unfortunately, we have to play catch up because everything was comatose. Of course, you sweat because the air conditioning came with the building in 1979. The bells came with the building in 1979. The generators came with the building in 1979. The lifts, the escalators, everything came with the building in 1979. What do you expect? So we are now changing everything. But then resources limit you. I wish I had a magic wand to just wish everything changing today and it all changes. Wonderful. But you had to look at the myriad of issues and the backlog that you had to catch up on, and you had to then prioritize this first, then this, then this, then this, because you don't have all those resources at once. You don't even have the human resources to do it at once. And in 2 years, I think we have done almost miraculously well. to where we are today from where we were 2 years ago. And we're continuing to move on. A lot of the critics say that we're focusing on terminals, which is not true. Terminals is what you see. But there's so much, I call back of house issues that people don't know we are doing. And we're doing, playing catch up on every level. You know, you are doing the building, you're doing the air conditioning, you are doing the lifts, you are doing the escalators, you're doing the generators, you are doing everything at the same time.
In other climes, what people often talk about is business as usual. When you're handling a major project or even a minor project, you have to say that business as usual should not be impaired in any way. You then have a situation where you're thinking, okay, well, what are the things being put in place to make sure that life for those who are flying through our airports is not a trauma?
Yeah, I always say, I've been saying from the beginning, I am a walking apology to Nigerians. I am saying that we are very sorry for what you're going through, because you can't shut down an airport to build it. Yeah. You have to build it while operating it. It is messy, it is stressful, but people must focus on the end result. And we're quietly doing this work in the background. We're hardly making any noise about what we're doing. But I know how Murtala Mohammed Airport is going to be when we finish what we're doing, at least this first phase of it. And I know how it's going to be in the future as we continue to unravel the things that we have planned and we're going to continue to do to make it an airport. Murtala Mohammed is just like Johannesburg International, or Tambo International was like Murtala Mohammed Airport about 15 years ago. Cape Town International was like that about 10 years ago. And then we decided to do the work on those airports. While they were being, if you went through that very beautiful OR Tambo International or Cape Town International, if you went through those airports when they were being constructed, you would be so upset by the inconvenience as a result of construction. But today, look at it. It's beautiful. It takes time to get there. If I had as we call it, a jazz man somewhere in my village that I could say, please, Okwe, make this thing happen tomorrow morning, I will go and sleep. But it has to be built.
You need Alibaba's genie to do it for you.
Exactly. Just before we move on, sorry, Alero, I was going to ask you, you're talking of 1979, 1981, 1985, the years when some of these airports were delivered, completed, and handed over, and they're running, and for that many number of years, children born then, they're married with kids now, and their kids are in secondary school, actually, for some of them. But when we look at what happened between then and the last 2-3 years, did they have any budget? Where did the money go? Because Nigerians are extremely curious. What happened to the money?
Touchy.
No, we must know, we must ask these questions.
When we started this journey, our minister, who obviously, of course, is our leader, she agreed with us that let us cut off from the past. Let's not keep referring to the past.
But we must look at what happened.
Let's move forward from the day we came in forward. But yes, those questions are valid questions.
Well, he wasn't there then, I promise you.
But he must know. He would have looked at the history.
I mean, even just a few years ago, there was a 19.5 billion naira, I think it was, Aviation Intervention Fund. Well, show me the evidence of one thing that came out of that 19.5 billion naira.
Who was the minister then? Because we should ask that person.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I think that's a good question to ask. But what is very pertinent here is that our leader, the minister, introduced, just like my colleague just said, let's draw a line. But then